Good evening, everyone, and welcome
Evening.
to our Mental Health Awareness Month conversation. Forgive us for the delay, but thank you for your patience and for joining us. This year's theme is Mind Matters Conversations for Healing and Growth. And tonight, we're going to discuss something that impacts every area of our lives: our relationships, our peace, our emotional health, even our spiritual well being. And that something is boundaries. Many of us love so deeply, we serve faithfully, we show up for everybody else. And all the while, we are struggling with exhaustion and resentment, even anxiety, and we probably can add to the list. So, tonight I am extremely excited because we're going to learn how to protect our peace in ways that are healthy, but also honor God. And tonight we have a jewel with us, full of wisdom and insight, and it is my pleasure to introduce her to you. With us tonight, we have Pastor Vanessa Johnson, and she is the owner of Thrive to Heal, a counseling and therapeutic services agency dedicated to helping individuals and families move from surviving to thriving. She's the executive pastor of Greater Love Christian Center in Waynesboro, Virginia. She's been married to Reggie Johnson, who is her senior pastor for 33 years, and they have two sons and four granddaughters. Pastor Vanessa holds a master's in human service counseling and is currently completing her doctorate in education and community care and counseling with a focus on trauma. Her work centers on increasing awareness of trauma and its impact, not only on individuals, but also on family systems and relationships. She is deeply passionate about equipping individuals, families, and professionals with practical tools to support healing and long term emotional and mental stability. And in addition to her clinical work, Pastor Vanessa integrates this focus into her pastoral work, where she is committed to creating space and meaningful conversations around trauma, particularly areas where it has often gone unaddressed. Her work is grounded in compassion, transparency, and genuine desire to see people experience healing, restoration, and growth. Thank you, Pastor, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Wonderful. So we're not going to wait. We're going to jump into it. So I'd like to start by bringing some understanding to what boundaries actually are. Because sometimes when people hear that word, immediately they think of things like conflict or distance or pushing people away. So when you hear the word boundaries, what comes to mind?
When I hear the word boundary, I think of safety. That's the word that comes to mind first. Because when we set boundaries, that is something that we're gifting or giving to ourselves, making sure that we're safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important because many people they struggle with boundaries.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we don't even fully understand what healthy boundaries actually look like in everyday life. So,
Mhm.
how would you explain boundaries in like simple everyday in a simple everyday way?
I would say that it involves, you can call them rules or you can just say limits that you put in place to protect your own emotional and sometimes physical safety.
Yeah. What would you say is the difference between a boundary and then being controlling or shutting people out?
Hmm, that's a great question. Um, Boundaries, I think, are made for you to again protect yourself, make sure that you feel safe. When we talk about control, that is something that you're doing that impacts someone other than you. When
Hmm.
you are when you're controlling, it's not about you anymore. Now you're trying to almost put people in that space and have them function in a way that makes you feel safe. However, boundaries are what you feel are safe, and then if they don't do that, then you keep the boundary up. I always tell people we have control of three things: ourself, our emotions, and our immediate situation. That's our place of control. But when it becomes an act that impacts someone else and who they are, then that's when you're really trying to come outside of that boundary to controlling situations and other people which you do not have control over.
That's good. So we know even when people understand boundaries are healthy, they can still be really difficult to practice. But
Mhm.
speak to why you think boundaries are so hard for people.
I think that's a great question, and I think there are different components that I think about when I hear people say it's hard for me to do, and I think that's why it's so important for us to become self-aware. First, I need to
Mhm.
determine why do I need the boundary? What is impacting me? What's causing me negative emotions? What's causing me to become dysregulated? Who is it? What environment is it? I'm going to ask myself those questions, and then secondly I'm going to say, what are my steps to doing that? Because it can be uncomfortable. And here's another component, it's uncomfortable a lot of times for people who really thrive off of acceptance, who want to please people all the time, who identify themselves or their identity is in serving. I think you talked about that earlier. We're going to serve everywhere and everyone's going to love me. So if I have to put in boundaries, some of that is going to kind of cause resistance. It may cause rejection. Then
Mhm.
I will feel like I need to self isolate. But I think if we go back to the beginning, to our why, we have to learn how to start to care for ourselves better, emotionally, physically, psychologically. And once I understand that I've identified an environment where there's always negative talk and I don't feel good about myself, or I'm in an environment where people are questioning my decision making, or always wanting me to do something for them that's then harmful to me, understanding my why and understanding that I'm a priority makes it easier. And then the last thing I'll say to it is consistently practicing it. Because you can say to a person, I don't feel comfortable with this conversation, or I don't feel comfortable when you do that, or I've decided that I'm not going to go to that place. You have to be prepared to deal with feelings of rejection because people will do that sometimes. But understand that you're doing the best thing for yourself. But if you don't do it consistently, it'll be temporary. They'll come back and try again. You'll let them in because you were uncomfortable with the feelings that came with you setting that boundary, and then you have to deal with those emotions that only impact you. So I would say get to know yourself, understand what they are, set them, and be consistent.
Good. That's good. Okay. So we have kind of laid the foundation. Now I want to shift a little bit. Many people don't realize that they need boundaries until they are, emotionally depleted. And so, with that, what are some signs that someone might need stronger boundaries?
Um, I didn't get the last part. Tell me that question again. I'm sorry.
So, I said that sometimes we don't realize that we even need boundaries until we're emotionally depleted. And so, can you share some signs of um, if we might need strong boundaries?
Oh, that's good. If the behavior of the people around you don't change, if you set a boundary and it still doesn't change their interaction with you, or you set boundaries on what you're going to do, and I'll use a simple one. I know people who really want to please everyone, so they become depleted and exhausted because they're serving everyone but themselves. But as soon as they put that boundary in place, they may, or the person may say, okay, okay, I won't call you. I won't call you. I'll try to call someone else for a change if I need a ride somewhere. When that time frame is short and they come right back around and they ask you for that ride again, and this is a very simple example, you may say, "Well, Crystal, did you ask so and so, or did you ask your sister?" No, because they always get lost. I just thought I would call you. You have to say, "I said that these days I cannot take you anywhere, so I'm so sorry, but you have to find someone else." And let the person deal with the consequence of your consistency. Let them deal with the
Mm-hmm.
consequence of your consistency. When you say no, let it be no. And I think a stronger boundary is the foundation of that is consistency. When you continue to say no and you set that boundary and you say I'm not going to do, we can't go backwards. That's the strength. That's when the courage builds. When you stick to what you say.
Yeah, that's good. So it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I want you to talk about how do poor our boundaries affect our mental and emotional health?
Let me make sure I heard that correctly. How do our boundaries affect our mood and emotional health?
How do poor boundaries affect our mental and
Mm,
emotional?
so many ways. So many ways. I think when you don't set boundaries or you have poor boundaries, and so you're inviting all of those things that may cause emotional dysregulation, may cause you to feel rejected, and you don't want to deal with that. You're also inviting things like intrusive thoughts into your mind because now it's a playground for the enemy to tell you that you're a bad person, that you're hurting them, and you should do such and such. And that's all a trap to stop you from taking care of yourself and making sure that you're healthy. I think it's very easy for us to have poor boundaries or want to give up because there's something going on with our identity and our ability to prioritize our own emotional and mental health. And so on the outward, it could look like someone is starting to get depressed. It's weighty to carry stuff that you're not supposed to carry. And that's the other thing I think boundaries do. It keeps you from the weight of other people. So now you're weighty, you're sad, you're depressed, you're tired. You don't feel like you have time to do anything for yourself. It can cause a lot of I would say mood dysregulation. Like, one minute you're okay, the next minute you're not, especially if you're doing something for someone else that you said you set boundaries with. There's a lot of, I think, psychological exhaustion that can happen. You're just, every time you see that person, they are always tired. They always have stuff to do. I'd like to give a short example. I was talking to a young lady a while back, and she's a mother of five. She just had twins. And so we're talking and have a conversation. And she's like, I just don't feel like I have time for myself. She was actually in a program to become a licensed clinician. And she said, I don't have time to study and I can't get these clinical hours in. And she was going on and on. And in that same breath, she said, and then I had to plan this whole baby shower for this lady at work. She's a perfect example of what you just described. And I said to her, did you volunteer? She said, yeah. And I said, well, why did you? She said, well, if I didn't do it, no one else was going to. And I said this to her, but who asked you to? Did you ask for help? Did you build a team so you would not have to do it all? So there's something happening in her that's trying to satisfy two things that I think don't go together. Pleasing other people at the
Mhm.
same time you're supposed to be taking care of yourself. That's not a thing. Yeah, you have to be the priority.
Yeah, that's good. Um, I think one of the reasons that boundaries can be especially challenging is because for some people, there's also a spiritual component to it. Sometimes
Mm,
people wrestle with guilt and obligation or even fear that setting limits somehow isn't loving or isn't Christ-like. So I want to shift a little bit to the faith perspective for a moment.
mhm,
And what I'll say is that as I was preparing for tonight, I thought about Jesus. And I thought about how throughout scripture, we see him withdraw from the crowd and we him spend time alone and we even see him rest. And in many ways, I think we can say that that's him modeling healthy boundaries for us. But what would you say to the person who struggles with this? Someone who feels like setting boundaries may not be loving or Christ-like. Like, how can we honor Christ and still set healthy boundaries?
Crystal, for me, I think you got to know there is a struggle. You have to know that things are impacting you in a negative way. I always say that healing is a choice, but I think everything that we do in our lives is rooted and grounded in what we choose. I think the other thing too is when we fear all those different things like rejection and we're afraid of how people are going to respond, I think there's a lack of knowing your identity in Christ. The Bible
Yeah,
is full of things that refute the spirit of fear because he did not give us that. There are
right.
scriptures in the Bible that talk about who we are as sons and daughters, as joint heirs with Christ. And so I think from a faith perspective, if you don't know who you are in Christ, if you are not understanding and recognizing that there is a struggle, then that's going to make it very difficult for you to set those boundaries, keep those boundaries, and make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And the other thing I'll say is this: choosing yourself over people is not selfish. It's called self-care. And we cannot be effective servants in the kingdom of God. When you talk about Jesus and you talk about him going away and isolating and knowing that he had to spend time with his Father to make sure that he was always prepared and led by God to do the assignment that he was called to do. So many of us will raise our hands and God used me, and they think it's the mic. I want to serve, I want to be seen, I want to be used by God. But then we forget the very necessary thing. And I think that's time with him. That is a self-care act. Strength in the word, strength, well, spending time with God, strength, spending your time around, building your strength, spending around people who know how to set boundaries. I know Crystal knows how to set boundaries, and I'm struggling. So I need to add a faith component because I need a prayer partner. My husband and I were always taught, Dr. Shirley is our spiritual mom. You confess up. I'm not going to go and ask someone to pray with me that's struggling like me. I'm going to go to someone to say, listen, this is my area of struggle. But again, Crystal, I'll go back to the very beginning. If you don't recognize that you need that help, if you don't understand how it's impacting every area and aspect of your life, or you're not accepting of it,
Mhm.
the work won't get done.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Um, you've already kind of given us some practical ways throughout the conversation on how to set boundaries, but I want to pull out a few things. Um, what could somebody say when they feel uncomfortable saying no?
Okay, so you're saying when they feel uncomfortable setting the boundary.
Hmm.
Wow. I think for me, again, just kind of going back to something I said earlier, um, I'm taking a pause for the cause because I want to make sure I say this the right way. When I'm counseling people, when we're working with families, when we work with families where children have been removed from the home, and now the parents have to go through these services in order for the child to come back. And one of the first things we talk about is accountability to self. You're accountable for yourself because if you don't, you're setting a secret expectation for Crystal to know when she hurt your feelings, or for Crystal to know when she said she wasn't going to ask you 100 times to do something, but she's asked you 101. You have to be accountable for that place of knowing and accountable to yourself to move past it. It's going to be uncomfortable, but growth does not happen from comfort. There's so much realization that we have to have as people, not just in the marketplace, but as people of God. I do not know a story in the Bible, and I'm not a Bible scholar, but the ones that I do know, nobody was comfortable when change had to be made.
Right.
There
Right.
first had to be an accountability that I am the one that's in control of that change. And so that's again why it's so important to have leadership that you could go to in the church, have an accountability partner. If that's not your thing, for someone to say, Crystal, you're important. Only you can make the decision and have the accountability. And when you feel that place of discomfort, instead of going back into that place where you're not setting those boundaries, pray.
Mhm.
When you feel like you want to run back to that situation, call me. And those are two powerful things: accountability and prayer, and an understanding of who you
Thank you for that. Let us know, what should we expect when we start setting boundaries?
are. Oh, a whole lot of tomfoolery and foolishness. That's what we can expect. How about that? People, and I tell people this all the time: when you start making shifts that are in line with God and your growth, The people that liked you in that space of vulnerability and access of using you are going to get uncomfortable and try to bring you back. Relationships will shift, engagement with people will be lessened or shortened. You're not going to get invited everywhere. But I promise you this, your life will be healthier. Your mind and your spirit will be healthier. And whatever is lost in that process, God will always replace it with something better. Because a lot of times in that place of boundary, it's if you look at the word, you're bound. You're setting boundaries so that people so you can stay safe. But when you don't do that, you kind of bind yourself or bound yourself to those situations that are not healthy.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways that we could look at this, but you can expect that. You can expect to be lonely at times, but when you are locked in to growing and aligning with God, I promise you, you will come out better and you'll come out healthier. And those people that rejected you and acted funny and felt like you was doing too much will circle right back around to you. I pray this prayer over myself all the time. God, give me a Joseph's heart. Because if we were to be real for a minute, I'm trying to take care of myself and I'm trying to be healthy. And now you don't want to be my friend. And now you don't want to talk to me. And now I can't come certain places. God, give me a Joseph spirit because I know they're going to come right back into that circle and say, I need to do what you did. But I'm going to need the heart to not say, well, good luck to you. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
You do what you got to. I want a Joseph spirit because I know that's the spirit of Christ that would let them come back in, but I can't let them come back into a space I'm not willing to protect if they don't do what they need to do.
That's good.
Yeah.
I have another question for you. So, for the, let's say, someone sets a boundary and they're doing well for a while, right? But later they realize that they loosened it too much and they need to
Mhm.
reset it. What's a healthy way to do that?
So let me make sure I understand. So they set a boundary. They're doing great, and it feels like they set too much of a boundary. Is that what you said?
No, it's more like maybe they've been getting some resistance, right, from the one they were setting the boundaries with. So, for comfortability's sake, I just start to loosen it up a little bit, right? And then I realize, okay, I loosened it too much, and I need to really reset this boundary. How can I do
Yes.
that in a healthy way? Because now all
Communication.
this time, and I've been allowing them maybe to cross the line, and I don't want to do that anymore.
And I think that's a great place for conversation to happen, right? Because in the beginning, I think I'll just use myself as an example. I will set the boundary, walk away from conversations and say, "Can we talk about something else?" Or just say, "Girl, on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, that's me and my husband's time." So or set a boundary with my staff. Don't call me after 7. This is a real good example. Don't call me after 7 p.m. because my husband's like, "You answering that phone way too much." And so I remember having the phone sitting next to me and thinking, somebody needs me. This is me. I'm a caregiver. Somebody needs me, and we're just sitting here watching TV, just kind of ignoring the fact that that's the intimacy between me and my husband, and I'm disrupting that, right? So now I'm answering the phone, and the person says, "Do you have 2 minutes?" Sound familiar? You just got three. Yeah, I got it. That 3 minutes has turned into 20 minutes. That's the loosening thing. Then what I did was I had to circle back. And it was my staff. I had to circle back and say, in a group setting, so nobody felt isolated, but I would do it one on one if I had to. I would just say, hey, I set a limit at 7. I know I answered. Accountability.
Mhm.
I know I answered the call, but I need to go back to that. And here's why. I get more sleep when I'm not thinking about the job. I get to spend time with my husband, which is amazing. We've been married for a long time and I want to keep that thing going. And I don't make it harsh, but I do have a resolve in my tone, which means I'm accountable for loosening it. But now I'm bringing it back in. You understand what I mean, right, girl? You understand. I got to spend time. I keep it light so that people understand and understand this. They're gonna call again at 7:15. I promise you they will. and you just don't answer the phone.
Yes, yes, I love that. And I love that you talked about the approach in which you did it, right? Because when I hear you describing how you did that, it was in love. It wasn't condemning. It wasn't, trying to make them feel guilty about it. So the approach in which we do it really doesn't matter. And so I love hearing you say that. And just overall, like I've enjoyed hearing you talk because it's important to hear this because sometimes we assume that discomfort means that we're doing something wrong. And a lot of times it just means we're doing something new. It's not wrong. It's
That's
just
good. That's good. That'll preach right there. That's so good. And there are boundaries. We were talking earlier. There are boundaries when there's, and I talked about kind of the negative side of that. But then there are boundaries that are not as much negative. But I love Crystal. I just want to be around her all the time. I just, girl, what you doing? Um, single women that are trying to be in the space with married women and sometimes have a struggle kind of sharing them with, their husbands. I've had people say to me, they say, can we go to lunch? Sure, we can go to lunch. Let's put it on the calendar. We go to lunch and this is what they'll say. This was so good. I love hanging out with you. We should do this every week. No matter, we're not doing it every week. And so instead of having that look on my face, I would say, girl, I wish I could do that every week, but I got, blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
I said, and so I say a better option is whenever either one of us is free, you just hit the other one up and just know that we're both really busy. We'll just circle around or we'll just, use a calendar or something of that nature. But I would be so sure, sure, knowing in my mind that when they call and ask me if I'm available, I'm going to say no. I just give it to them all up front so they know if I say no, then there's a reason. I don't have time.
yeah,
And I'll say this last thing too, Crystal. Sometimes I just want to be by myself. And I've learned to love the quietness of that
mhm,
because what we do takes a lot of pouring out, but we're also receiving a whole lot in.
yeah,
I told my husband he works from home and he's an IT guy, and so he's here all day by himself, and so we're in the mix of it. You know what it is, client after client, bum bum bum, we're in, and so when I would come home, he would just go, blah, this is my day, and this is what happened, and this is what I talked to it, and my mind, I'm getting ready to crack right now.
yeah,
And so I said to him, I said, sweetheart, I want to hear all about your day. I tell mothers this. I really want to hear all about your day, but I need about 30 minutes where I just need to sit. Or can I just have 30 minutes, curl up under your arm and just let me relax? That's what I need. And he's my husband now. And I had to set that boundary because you know what he did like a week later? What? I said, mm. And so I just put my arms out like this, say, give me a hug. And he said, oh, yeah, 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 I forgot.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah, there's like two sides to that boundary thing.
I love that. Um, okay. Now, for the person who says, I'm ready to start setting boundaries, what would you recommend the one step be that they can take this week toward healthy boundaries? One small step.
One small step that they can take for healthy boundaries. Um, Pick the area, the people, places, and things where you don't feel safe, where you don't feel emotionally safe, or you feel like um, you want to not be in that space, not be in that conversation, whatever it is. Just identify the area first. Identify it. I think you have to identify it. And I'm going to say this, it may sound crazy, but stop there. Just stop right there. What's the space? What's the space, the person, the place I need to set boundaries in? If it is, I hate to say it. No, not really. I don't hate to say it. Doing too much for the church. You everywhere. You on five different committees. You on the board or something else. You singing. You get down from the praise team, then you take your place at the door greeting people. I know that Destiny has a lot of balance because Mom Shirley teaches balance all the time. But there are so many ministries where you will have one person that every Sunday they're serving somewhere, and then they go home exhausted. What's the one place that you know and you keep talking about? This is another way we can identify. I talk about it all the time. As soon as I see Reggie, and he's like, "How you doing?" I'm good. I'm just tired. And I've been to my mom's house and my sister's house. Then I had to cook cookies for the kids. What's the one area? Because you can still cook the cookies and tell mom and them no. It's a complete sentence. No, I can't. Identify it first. That's one small step. Because I think in that identifying, there's a awareness, there's a realization of why you chose it. And then the next step is I would encourage people. I know you didn't ask for a next step, but then after you identify, people will say, well, what do I do now that I said it? She got me running too much. If you are struggling emotionally to set boundaries, to increase your own mental and emotional health, find a professional.
Yeah.
There are too many options for us to make an excuse. I saw something on TV not too long ago where therapeutic appointments are as low as $15. That's how important this has become to the world. So there are no excuses. Find someone to talk to, and don't find someone to dump on. Find someone to talk to.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Pastor Johnson, I thank you for your pour tonight. It was truly needed, and I know it blessed those that were watching and listening. It definitely blessed me. And just to close, like tonight's conversation reminds us just how important it is to protect our peace. And also, you said it when you were talking. It's not selfish, and I'm big on reframing. And so
Mhm.
we look at it as stewardship, not
Oh, that's good.
self-stewardship.
That's good.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. Um, healing and growth it often begins with being honest about our limits. When we honor what God is showing us, and when we give ourselves permission to take care of ourselves, not only mentally but emotionally and spiritually. So that's just something for us to walk away with tonight.
Yeah.
And before we officially close, we're gonna shift to our time of giving. I'm gonna start with if you heard something tonight, you were blessed by what you heard, what you saw. Um, we're gonna put up Pastor Vanessa's cash app, and if you feel led to so do so into her, and then also it's our time to give your tithe, give your offering. Remember our apostle. We'll put her information up as well. You know the ways to give. They're on the screen. And so we just thank you all for joining us tonight for our Mind Matters conversations for healing and growth. Thank you for bearing with us through the technical difficulties. We appreciate you. We hope you were blessed by what you saw and what you heard. And come back next week for the next conversation in our series of Mind Matters conversations for healing and growth. Be blessed and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.